I can't shake the image from my mind. The small, crisp, white card sitting on the nightstand like a silent accusation. It was just an ordinary business card, the kind you pick up by the dozen at events. But there was something about it that sent a chill down my spine. It was as if that card was the key to a door I didn't want to open. It had been a long day at work, and I was looking forward to nothing more than sinking into bed and talking with Jennifer about her day. She had been excited all week about the art auction she was attending. I remember how she had carefully chosen her outfit the night before, trying on different dresses, asking for my opinion, and finally settling on the little black number that always made her feel confident. But as I entered our bedroom, the soft lighting from the bedside lamp casting a warm glow, I noticed the card immediately. I picked it up, my thumb brushing over the embossed lettering. The name on the card was unfamiliar. Ethan Collins, art curator. My first thought was that Jennifer must have met him at the auction. It made sense. Networking was a big part of these events. Still, a nagging feeling of unease began to creep in. I turned the card over, half expecting to see a note or a phone number, but it was blank. As I stood there, staring at the card, Jennifer walked in, still glowing from the evening. She looked stunning, her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. But when she saw me holding the card, something flickered in her expression. Just for a second, but enough for me to notice. "Oh, that's just from one of the organizers," she said casually, taking the card from my hand and tossing it back on the nightstand. "He was telling me about some upcoming events." I nodded, trying to shake off the discomfort. But as she went on about the auction and the people she met, I couldn't help but feel that there was something she wasn't telling me. The way she spoke, her gestures, the way she avoided my eyes when she mentioned Ethan Collins, it all felt off. That night, as we lay in bed, Jennifer quickly drifted off to sleep, her breathing soft and even. I, on the other hand, couldn't close my eyes. My mind kept replaying the moment I found that card and the brief look of panic in her eyes. It was a small thing, a fleeting moment, but it planted a seed of doubt that would soon take root and grow into something I couldn't ignore. Our anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to do something special for Jennifer. Our lives had become routine, and I thought it was time to remind her of the love we shared, the passion that brought us together in the first place. I knew she had been stressed with work lately, and she'd been distant, though I chalked it up to the pressures of her job. I wanted to surprise her, to show her that I still paid attention, that I still cared. Jennifer had always loved art. We used to visit galleries together, spending hours lost in the colors and textures of the paintings. We would talk about what each piece meant to us, how it made us feel. Those were some of our best moments, just the two of us, connected in a world of our own. So when I found out about the prestigious art auction happening in the city, I knew it would be the perfect gift. I managed to get her a ticket, something that wasn't easy to come by, and I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when I gave it to her. When I handed her the envelope on the morning of our anniversary, she opened it with a puzzled expression. But as soon as she saw the ticket, her eyes lit up, and she threw her arms around me. "Oh my God, Michael, this is amazing! How did you manage to get this?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. I smiled, happy to see her so thrilled. "I have my ways," I said, winking at her. "I know how much you love these things. I thought it would be a nice break for you." She kissed me, her lips warm against mine, and for a moment everything felt perfect. But in the back of my mind, there was still that nagging feeling, the memory of that business card and the way she had reacted to it. I pushed the thoughts away, telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was Jennifer, the woman I loved and trusted. The day of the auction, she spent hours getting ready. I watched as she meticulously applied her makeup, carefully choosing each accessory to match her dress. She was radiant, more beautiful than I'd seen her in a long time. But as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings, I noticed something different in her eyes. Anticipation, maybe even excitement. It was as if she was looking forward to something more than just the art. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that she was just eager to enjoy a night out. But the doubt that had taken root in my mind refused to be ignored. As she left that evening, I kissed her goodbye, telling her to have a great time. She smiled at me, but there was something in her gaze, something I couldn't quite place. And as the door closed behind her, I couldn't help but feel that I had just sent her off to something more than a simple art auction. It was late when Jennifer finally returned from the auction. I had stayed up, waiting for her, eager to hear about her night. But when she walked through the door, something was different. She was smiling, yes, but it was a distant, dreamy smile, not the usual excitement she had after an evening spent among the things she loved. "Hey," I greeted her, trying to keep my voice light. "How was it?" "It was incredible," she said, her eyes sparkling as she kicked off her heels and sank into the couch. "The art was just breathtaking. And the people I met. Michael, you wouldn't believe how inspiring it all was." She poured herself a glass of the expensive wine she had brought home, her hand slightly trembling as she did. I watched her, noticing how she seemed almost giddy. It wasn't the reaction I expected. Usually, after events like this, she would go on about the pieces that had caught her eye, the conversations she'd had with other attendees. But tonight, she seemed more interested in the overall atmosphere than in any particular detail. "Did you buy anything?" I asked, trying to steer the conversation back to the art itself. She shook her head. "No, but I was tempted. There was this one piece, a modern abstract, bold colors, very striking, but it was way out of our budget." She paused, taking a sip of her wine. "Still, I made some great connections. There's another event next month, and Ethan, Mr. Collins, said he could get us on the guest list." There it was again, that name. Ethan Collins. The name on the card, the man she had mentioned so casually before. I forced myself to smile. "That's great," I said, though I could feel the unease growing inside me. As we talked, or rather as she talked and I listened, I realized that something had shifted between us. It wasn't anything she said outright, but there was a new distance, a subtle change in the way she interacted with me. Her eyes were bright, but they didn't meet mine as often as they used to. She seemed distracted, as if part of her was still at the auction, still caught up in the energy of the night. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Jennifer was already breathing softly beside me, lost in whatever dreams the evening had inspired. But my mind was racing, filled with questions I didn't want to ask, fears I didn't want to acknowledge. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in the pit of my stomach. It was a quiet, gnawing doubt, but it was growing stronger with each passing day. And no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it kept coming back, whispering in my ear, telling me that the woman I loved, the woman I had spent the last 10 years of my life with, was slipping away from me. But even then, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that Jennifer, my Jennifer, could betray me. So I told myself it was all in my head, that I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The days following the auction were filled with a strange tension, an undercurrent of unease that I couldn't quite place. Jennifer seemed more distant, preoccupied with something I couldn't reach. I tried to shake it off, telling myself that she was just busy, but the signs were there, subtle yet undeniable. It started with the phone calls. Jennifer's phone had always been a part of our lives, buzzing with texts and calls from friends, family, and work. But now, it was different. She started receiving calls late at night, her phone vibrating silently on the nightstand as we were about to fall asleep. She would glance at the screen, her expression unreadable, and then slip out of bed, phone in hand, muttering something about work before disappearing into the living room. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jennifer's job could be demanding, and she often dealt with clients in different time zones. But it wasn't just the timing of the calls, it was the way she took them, the way she lowered her voice as she spoke, the way she kept her back turned to me as if she didn't want me to hear. One evening I couldn't help myself. After she'd taken yet another call and disappeared into the next room, I quietly followed her. I stood just outside the door, listening. Her voice was soft, almost whispering, and I could hear the low murmur of the person on the other end. She wasn't talking about work. That much was clear. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was intimate, too intimate for a business call. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there, torn between wanting to burst in and demand answers and wanting to turn around and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But before I could decide, Jennifer's voice rose slightly, and I heard her laugh, a light, carefree sound that sent a chill down my spine. I retreated back to our bedroom, my mind racing. Who was she talking to? And why did she feel the need to hide it from me? I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for her to return. When she finally did, she slid into bed beside me, kissing my cheek as if nothing had happened. But I could feel the distance between us growing, a chasm that seemed to widen with each passing day. I wanted to ask her about it, to confront her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I lay there, silently fuming, my mind filled with questions I didn't want to know the answers to. I knew I needed to talk to her, but a part of me was afraid of what I might hear. So I kept quiet, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. It wasn't long before I noticed other changes in Jennifer. They were small at first, little things that wouldn't have meant much on their own, but together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. She started dressing differently, more carefully, more deliberately. Jennifer had always had a great sense of style, but now she seemed to be putting extra effort into her appearance, even when she wasn't going anywhere special. She'd spend hours in front of the mirror, trying on different outfits, applying makeup with a precision that was almost obsessive. "Do you think this looks good?" she'd ask, turning to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, you look beautiful," I'd reply, but the words felt hollow in my mouth. I wanted to ask her who she was trying to impress, but I bit my tongue. It wasn't just her appearance either. Jennifer started going out more often, always with some vague excuse about meeting friends or attending work functions. I tried to believe her, but the more she left the house, the more I felt like something was slipping away. One night, she came home later than usual, her cheeks flushed, her hair slightly tousled. She was carrying a small, elegant box, the kind you'd expect to see in a high-end jewelry store. "What's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Oh, just something I picked up on the way home," she said, quickly setting the box down on the kitchen counter. "Can I see?" I asked, reaching for it. But Jennifer's hand shot out, grabbing the box before I could touch it. "It's nothing," she said, her voice a little too sharp. "Just a gift for a friend." I nodded, but the suspicion gnawed at me. I could tell she was lying, but I didn't know why. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Jennifer was becoming a stranger to me. The woman I had married, the woman I had spent the last 10 years of my life with, was slipping away, and I had no idea how to stop it. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, the space between us felt like 1,000 miles. I wanted to reach out, to pull her close and make everything right again, but I didn't know how. All I could do was lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering where we had gone wrong. The next morning, I woke up determined to find out what was really going on. I couldn't stand the secrecy any longer, the feeling that something was being hidden from me. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. While Jennifer was in the shower, I decided to go through her things. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I hated the idea of invading her privacy, but I felt like I had no other choice. The doubts were eating away at me, and I needed answers. I started with her purse. I rummaged through it quickly, feeling like a thief in my own home. There were the usual items, her wallet, keys, makeup. But then I found something that made my heart stop. A ticket stub from another art auction. It was for an event she hadn't mentioned, and it was dated 2 days after the auction I'd bought her the ticket for. My mind raced. Why hadn't she told me about it? And who had she gone with? Next, I moved on to her phone. It was locked, of course, but I knew her password. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the screen. But then I pressed the numbers and unlocked it. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages, looking for anything that might explain the changes in her behavior. There were texts from friends, coworkers, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I saw a name that made my blood run cold: Ethan Collins. There were a few messages between them, seemingly innocent on the surface, but I could tell there was more to it. The tone was too familiar, too warm. And then I saw it, a message from him late one night. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it." My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of my eyes. I didn't want to believe it, but there it was, in black and white. Jennifer was having an affair. I quickly locked the phone and put it back where I'd found it, my mind reeling. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted with my life, was betraying me. And now I had proof. When Jennifer came out of the shower, she was all smiles, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I watched her as she got ready, my heart breaking with every word she said, every smile she gave me. How long had this been going on? How could she stand there, acting like everything was normal, when she was tearing our life apart? I knew I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to think, to figure out what to do next. But as I watched her, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The Jennifer I had known was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who had shattered my heart without a second thought. I couldn't keep the truth buried any longer. Every day felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, and the knowledge of Jennifer's betrayal gnawed at me from the inside out. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely able to focus on anything other than the inevitable confrontation. My thoughts raced, swinging between anger and despair. I had to know why, and I had to hear it from her. One evening, after she came home from another mysterious outing, I decided it was time. We sat down to dinner, but I could barely touch my food. Jennifer seemed oblivious, chatting about her day as if nothing were wrong. It made my blood boil, how easily she could lie to me, how effortlessly she could pretend that everything was fine. "Jennifer," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. My voice was steadier than I expected, but my heart was pounding in my chest. "We need to talk." She looked up at me, her fork halfway to her mouth. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I know about Ethan Collins." Her smile faltered, and she set her fork down slowly. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb, Jennifer," I snapped, the anger I'd been holding back finally bubbling to the surface. "I know you've been seeing him. I saw the messages on your phone." She froze, her face paling. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, but then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Michael, how long has this been going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. "How long have you been lying to me?" She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "A few months," she admitted quietly. "It started after the first auction. I didn't mean for it to happen, Michael. It just did." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. A few months. All this time she'd been carrying on with this man, lying to my face, pretending that everything was normal. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Why, Jennifer? Why would you do this to us?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was unhappy, Michael. We've been so distant lately, and I felt like, I don't know, like I was missing something. Ethan was there, and he made me feel alive again." Her words cut through me like a knife. "So this is my fault?" I asked bitterly. "I wasn't enough for you, so you decided to find someone else." "No, that's not what I'm saying," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I got caught up in something, and I didn't know how to stop." I stared at her, my heart breaking all over again. I wanted to scream at her, to make her feel the pain she had caused me, but all I could do was sit there, numb with shock. "Is it over?" I asked finally, my voice barely more than a whisper. She hesitated, and that hesitation was answer enough. I stood up abruptly, knocking my chair over in the process. "I can't do this," I muttered, storming out of the room. I needed to get out of the house, to clear my head, to escape from the nightmare that my life had become. As I walked out into the cool night air, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, it was all gone, shattered by her betrayal. And I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. After our confrontation, Jennifer and I barely spoke. The air between us was thick with tension, every interaction loaded with unspoken words and unresolved pain. I couldn't look at her without feeling a wave of anger and sadness, and I knew she felt the same. Our home, once a place of comfort and love, had become a battleground, a constant reminder of what we had lost. I spent more time at work, throwing myself into my job as a way to escape the chaos at home. But even there, I couldn't escape my thoughts. Every quiet moment, every lull in the day, brought the memories rushing back. The way she had looked at me, the way she had confessed, the way she had torn our life apart with a few simple words. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find Jennifer sitting on the couch, staring at a glass of wine in her hand. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes red and puffy. It was clear she had been crying, but I felt no sympathy, only a deep, aching weariness. "We need to talk," she said softly, setting the glass down on the coffee table. I nodded, sitting down in the armchair opposite her. I didn't know what else there was to say, but I was too tired to argue. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "About us, about what I've done. I know I've hurt you, Michael, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen." I didn't respond, my eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. I couldn't bring myself to look at her, to see the regret and guilt etched on her face. "I've made a decision," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to leave." My head snapped up at her words, my heart skipping a beat. "What?" She took a deep breath, wiping away the tears that had started to fall. "I think it's best if I move out for a while. We need some space, some time to figure out what we want. I can't stay here, Michael. Not like this." I stared at her, my mind reeling. Part of me wanted to beg her to stay, to tell her that we could work through this, that we could fix what was broken. But another part of me, the part that had been drowning in pain and betrayal, knew that she was right. We couldn't go on like this, not after everything that had happened. "Where will you go?" I asked, my voice hollow. "I'll stay with a friend," she said, her eyes downcast. "Just for a little while, until we figure out what to do next." I nodded slowly, the reality of the situation sinking in. Jennifer was leaving, and there was nothing I could do to stop her. The life we had built together was crumbling before my eyes, and I was powerless to save it. "When are you leaving?" I asked, my throat tight. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "I've already packed some things." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words crashing down on me. Tomorrow. In less than 24 hours, the woman I had spent the last decade of my life with would be gone, and I would be left to pick up the pieces of our shattered marriage. "I'm sorry, Michael," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." But her apology did nothing to ease the pain. As I sat there, the silence between us heavy and suffocating, I realized that this was the end. The life we had once shared was over, and there was no going back. The day Jennifer left was the hardest of my life. I watched as she packed the last of her things into her car, her movements slow and deliberate. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. When she finally turned to me, her eyes were filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. "I'll be in touch," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat. I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something more, but then she simply turned and got into the car. I watched as she drove away, the taillights disappearing down the street, taking with them the last remnants of the life we had built together. I stood there for a long time, long after the car was gone, long after the sun had dipped below the horizon. The house was eerily quiet without her, the silence pressing in on me from all sides. I felt like a ghost in my own home, drifting aimlessly through the rooms that now seemed so empty, so devoid of life. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to adjust to my new reality. Every corner of the house was a reminder of her. Her favorite chair in the living room, the empty space on the bathroom counter where her things used to be, the lingering scent of her perfume in the bedroom. It was as if she had left a part of herself in every room, haunting me even in her absence. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the pain with long hours and endless tasks. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the emptiness remained. I missed her, despite everything. I missed the sound of her laughter, the way she would hum to herself as she cooked dinner, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch at the end of a long day. I missed the life we had shared, the future we had planned, the love that had once been so strong. But I knew that love wasn't enough to save us. Jennifer's betrayal had shattered something deep inside me, something that couldn't be repaired with time or distance. I had trusted her with my heart, and she had broken it, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. Friends and family reached out, offering their support, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. The words felt too raw, too painful to speak out loud. So I withdrew, retreating into myself, trying to find some way to move forward. It wasn't easy. There were days when the grief threatened to swallow me whole, when the weight of the loss was almost too much to bear. But I knew I had to keep going, one day at a time, even if I didn't know where I was headed. As the weeks passed, the pain slowly began to dull. It didn't go away, but it became a part of me, a scar that would never fully heal. I learned to live with it, to accept that my life had changed, that the future I had once envisioned was gone. But as I stood there, alone in the house we had once shared, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to truly move on, if I would ever be able to open my heart again, to trust, to love, to rebuild what had been lost. Only time would tell. And for now, all I could do was keep putting one foot in front of the other, hoping that someday the pain would fade and I would find a way to live again. The first few months after Jennifer left were a blur of loneliness and confusion. I went through the motions of daily life, but everything felt hollow, like I was living someone else's life. The pain of her betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of the life we had lost. I avoided social events, unwilling to face the pitying looks and awkward questions. But eventually, the isolation became too much to bear. One evening, after yet another lonely dinner, I found myself scrolling through my phone, aimlessly looking for something to distract me from the emptiness. My finger hovered over Jennifer's name in my contacts, but I quickly moved past it, not ready to reopen that wound. Instead, I landed on another name, Eric, my old college friend. We hadn't spoken in a while, but he had always been there for me in the past. Without thinking too much about it, I sent him a text. "Hey, it's been a while. Want to grab a drink sometime?" His response was almost immediate. "Absolutely. How about tonight?" A part of me wanted to say no, to retreat back into the safety of my solitude, but another part of me knew I needed this. I needed to reconnect with the world, to start living again. So I agreed, and an hour later, I found myself walking into our old favorite bar, the one we used to frequent during our college days. Eric was already there, sitting at a table near the back. He looked up as I approached, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Michael, it's been too long, man." I forced a smile, feeling a pang of guilt for having let so much time pass without reaching out. "Yeah, it has." We sat down, and after ordering our drinks, we fell into the easy conversation that had always come naturally between us. Eric filled me in on his life, his job, his family. I listened, grateful for the distraction, but I could tell he was waiting for me to bring up Jennifer. Eventually, he couldn't hold back any longer. "So, how are you holding up? I heard about what happened." I took a deep breath, the familiar ache in my chest resurfacing. "It's been rough," I admitted, staring down at my drink. "I didn't see it coming, you know? One day, everything seemed fine, and the next, it was all gone." Eric nodded sympathetically. "I'm really sorry, man. I can't imagine what you're going through." "Yeah," I muttered, taking a sip of my beer. "It's been tough, but I guess I just have to keep going, right?" "That's all you can do," he said, his voice gentle. "But you don't have to do it alone. You've got friends who care about you, Michael. Don't shut us out." His words hit me harder than I expected, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I didn't have to go through this alone. Maybe there was a way to rebuild my life, one step at a time. We spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about old times, laughing at stories from our college days. For a few hours, I was able to forget about the pain, to remember what it felt like to be happy. And as I left the bar that night, I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward after all. As the months passed, I slowly began to piece my life back together. It wasn't easy. There were still days when the weight of Jennifer's betrayal felt too heavy to bear, but I was starting to find my footing again. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and even started working out regularly, using the physical activity to clear my mind. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to take a walk through the park. The sun was shining, and the air was crisp, a perfect autumn day. I had been spending more time outdoors lately, finding solace in nature when the walls of the house felt too confining. As I walked along the tree-lined path, lost in thought, I noticed a familiar figure up ahead. She was sitting on a bench, her head bent over a book, her long brown hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. I stopped in my tracks, my heart skipping a beat. It was Emily, an old friend of ours from when Jennifer and I were still together. We hadn't seen each other since the divorce, and I hesitated, unsure if I should approach her. But before I could decide, she looked up and spotted me. A smile spread across her face, and she waved me over. "Michael, it's so good to see you," she said warmly as I approached the bench. "Emily," I said, returning her smile. "It's been a while." "It has," she agreed, closing her book and setting it aside. "How have you been?" I sat down beside her, the tension in my chest easing slightly at the sight of her friendly face. "I've been better," I admitted, not wanting to lie. "But I'm getting there." She nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I heard about what happened with Jennifer. I'm really sorry, Michael. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for you." "It wasn't easy," I said, running a hand through my hair. "But I'm trying to move on. How about you? How have you been?" Emily's smile returned, and she started telling me about her life, her job, her travels, the new projects she was working on. As she spoke, I found myself relaxing, drawn in by her warmth and easygoing nature. There was something comforting about being with her, something that made me feel like I could be myself again, without the weight of the past hanging over me. We ended up talking for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I realized how much I had missed this. Connecting with someone, sharing stories, laughing without reservation. It felt like a small step toward healing, a reminder that there was still joy to be found in life, even after everything I had been through. As we finally stood up to leave, Emily turned to me, her eyes bright with sincerity. "I'm really glad we ran into each other today, Michael. We should do this again sometime." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. And as we exchanged numbers and said our goodbyes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a spark of something new beginning to take root in the ashes of my old life. My chance encounter with Emily marked a turning point in my journey of healing. In the weeks that followed, we started spending more time together, meeting up for coffee, going for walks, and even attending a few art exhibits. Each time we met, I found myself looking forward to it more and more, enjoying the simple pleasure of her company. Emily had a way of making me feel at ease, of drawing me out of the shell I had retreated into after Jennifer left. She was kind, thoughtful, and always seemed to know just what to say to lift my spirits. The more time we spent together, the more I realized how much I had missed having a true friend, someone I could talk to without fear of judgment or pity. One evening, as we were walking through the city after dinner, Emily turned to me, her expression serious. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said, curious about the sudden shift in her tone. She hesitated for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "Do you ever think about what you want for your future? I mean, after everything that's happened, what do you see for yourself?" Her question caught me off guard, and I took a moment to consider it. For so long, my future had been tied to Jennifer, to the life we had planned together. But now that that life was gone, I had been avoiding thinking too much about what came next. "I don't know," I admitted, looking down at the pavement as we walked. "I guess I've been so focused on getting through each day that I haven't really thought about the future. It's still hard to imagine what it might look like." Emily nodded, her expression understanding. "That's okay. It's natural to feel that way after everything you've been through. But I want you to know that it's okay to start thinking about it, to start imagining a new future for yourself." Her words stayed with me long after we said goodnight. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself reflecting on what she had said. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to think about what I wanted, about what kind of life I wanted to build, moving forward. I realized that I wanted to be happy again. I wanted to find peace, to let go of the pain and anger that had been consuming me. I wanted to live my life fully, to find joy in the little things, to reconnect with the world around me. And as I thought about all of this, I couldn't help but think about Emily. She had become an unexpected source of light in the darkness, a reminder that life could still hold beauty and promise, even after the hardest of times. The next day, I reached out to her, suggesting we meet for dinner again. As I waited for her reply, I felt a sense of anticipation that I hadn't felt in a long time. And when she responded with an enthusiastic "yes," I couldn't help but smile. For the first time since Jennifer had left, I felt like I was on the verge of something new, something good. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change, but rather a slow, steady shift, a new beginning, rooted in the simple joys of friendship and connection. And as I prepared to move forward into this new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a small, tentative hope, but it was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could find happiness again. As time went on, my relationship with Emily deepened. What started as a rekindled friendship began to grow into something more, something neither of us had anticipated. We spent more and more time together, sharing our thoughts, our fears, and our dreams for the future. The connection between us felt natural, almost effortless, and I found myself looking forward to every moment we spent together. One evening, after a particularly enjoyable dinner, we decided to take a walk through the city. The air was cool, and the lights of the buildings reflected off the wet pavement, casting a soft glow over everything. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in our thoughts. Suddenly, Emily stopped and turned to face me, her expression serious. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you." Her tone caught me off guard, and I felt a flicker of concern. "What is it?" I asked, searching her face for clues. She hesitated, taking a deep breath before she spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we've been building together, and I realize that I can't keep pretending that I don't have feelings for you. I know we started this as friends, but I've fallen for you, Michael, and I need to know if you feel the same way." Her words hung in the air between us, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. I hadn't expected this, hadn't considered the possibility that our friendship might evolve into something more. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that I had been feeling the same way for a while now. I had just been too afraid to acknowledge it. "Emily, I care about you deeply," I said, my voice soft but sincere. "I've been trying to figure out what these feelings mean, but I think I've been falling for you too." Her face lit up with relief and joy, and she stepped closer, taking my hand in hers. "I was so scared you didn't feel the same way," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I squeezed her hand, a smile spreading across my face. "I guess we've both been a little scared," I said, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "But maybe we don't have to be anymore." And in that moment, standing there on the quiet street, I felt a sense of clarity, a certainty that this was the beginning of something real, something worth holding on to. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer defined me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to open my heart again, to take a chance on love. After our confession, things between Emily and me changed in the best possible way. Our friendship had laid a solid foundation, and now that we had admitted our feelings for each other, we began to build something even stronger. We spent more time together, sharing not just our days, but also our hopes for the future. But as much as I wanted to embrace this new relationship, there were still moments of doubt and fear. The scars from my past with Jennifer hadn't fully healed, and I often found myself questioning whether I was truly ready to move on, to trust someone with my heart again. Emily sensed my hesitations, and one evening as we sat together on my couch, she brought it up. "Michael, I know this hasn't been easy for you," she said gently, her hand resting on mine. "And I want you to know that it's okay to take things slow. We don't have to rush into anything." Her understanding and patience meant the world to me, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "Thank you, Emily," I said, squeezing her hand. I don't want to hurt you. I'm still working through everything that happened with Jennifer, and I don't want that to affect us." She nodded, her eyes full of empathy. "I understand, and I'm here for you, whatever you need. We'll figure this out together, one step at a time." Her words reassured me, and over the next few weeks, we took things slowly, allowing our relationship to grow naturally. We continued to spend time together, enjoying each other's company without the pressure of defining what we were. And gradually, I found myself opening up more, letting go of the fears that had been holding me back. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, I realized how much I had come to cherish these moments with Emily. The laughter, the shared experiences, the quiet comfort of simply being together. It all felt so right, so genuine. And as I looked at her, I knew that I was ready to fully embrace this new chapter of my life. "Emily," I said, turning to face her, "I think I'm finally ready to move forward. With you." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with emotion. Are you sure? She asked softly, her voice tinged with hope. I nodded, a smile spreading across my face. Yes, I'm sure. I don't want to let fear hold me back anymore. I want to see where this goes. With you. Her smile was radiant, and she stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me in a warm embrace. I'm so glad, Michael, because I've been waiting for you, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. And as we stood there holding each other in the kitchen, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer had the power to control me. I had found something new, something real, and I was ready to move forward into the future with Emily by my side. With the decision to move forward, Emily and I began to truly build a life together. We started spending more nights together, sometimes at my place, sometimes at hers. The more time we spent together, the more I realized how much I had come to rely on her, not just as a partner, but as a friend, a confidant, and someone who made me want to be a better version of myself. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges, though. There were still moments when the shadow of my past crept in, moments when the fear of being hurt again would rear its ugly head. But Emily was always there, patient and understanding, helping me navigate through those difficult times. One weekend, we decided to take a trip out of the city to a small cabin in the mountains. It was a chance to get away from the daily grind, to focus on each other without any distractions. As we hiked through the forest and sat by the fire at night, talking about everything and nothing, I felt a deep sense of contentment that I hadn't felt in years. On the last night of our trip, as we sat outside under the stars, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. Michael, I've been thinking about us, about what we're building together, and I want you to know that I'm in this for the long haul. I see a future with you, and I hope you see one with me too. Her words caught me off guard, but in the best possible way. I realized then just how much I had come to love her, how much she had become a part of my life. Emily, I said, taking her hand in mine, I feel the same way. You've helped me find myself again, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. She smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. So, what do you say we keep building this life together? No more holding back, no more fears, just you and me, moving forward. I nodded, my heart swelling with love and gratitude. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. And in that moment, under the vast expanse of the night sky, I felt a sense of closure, of healing. The pain of Jennifer's betrayal was still a part of my past, but it no longer defined me. I had found love again, a love that was stronger, deeper, and more real than anything I had ever known. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that we were ready to face whatever the future held, together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy, knowing that I had finally found my way back to a life worth living.